What we're doing in this series is we're looking at the criticality of our homes, right? Because the most important things in our life live and happen in our home. That's where our deepest relationships live. That is where our sexuality lives. That's where our biases and prejudices and our beliefs and our values, all of that live right there in a home. And so regardless of what your home looks like, you really, really try to protect that stuff, don't you? The problem is we look around us and we see that house fell, that house fell, that house fell. And we look at, man, that marriage just fell apart. What in the world happened to that? We see, man, somebody just gave into a sin or a temptation and just blew their whole life up. And really when we see this, even if it happened to our own home, then it breaks our heart, doesn't it? None of us want a home that's going to fall down. Everyone wants a home that's strong and sturdy. So the question really is not, are you going to avoid the storms in life? That's just not a possibility. That's not reality. The question is, have you built your home on a foundation that's going to be withstanding of any storm that comes its way? And this is why we love what Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 7. He says this, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, remember this? It's not about believing Jesus or even agreeing with him. It's all about putting into practice the wisdom that he's giving us. He says, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains, the wind, the waves came and beat against that house, but it did not fall, right? As opposed to the other guy who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice. The wind, the waves, and the rain came and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. I mean, none of us wants that to happen. So the question that we're asking, and I'm even asking it of my house, is like, how do we build from this day on? Okay, kind of forget about what happened in the past. Forget about what happened in the past. Today, how do we start building our life, building our home on the solid foundation of Jesus so that it can withstand all those storms? The answer we discovered is simply this. It's just got to be a decision. We got to decide something. Here's what Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's a decision we have to make, right? And so as the one responsible for this domain, right? I'm not responsible for your house. I'm not responsible for your house. I'm not responsible for all the stuff, all the mess that's going on outside in the world. I'm responsible for my home. This is my domain. I'm going to say, as for me in this place, we're going to serve the Lord. So if there's anything that tries to get into my house, that would try to ruin that would dishonor the God we say we serve, that would get us in misalignment with his purposes for us, listen, I'm not going to let that in. This is my house, and I'm going to take charge of it. And the things that happen in my home, they're designed to serve the Lord. Now, if you're anything like my house, you would love to say that as for me and my house, we're always serving the Lord, okay? And so I would like to say that we are doing that most of the time. I mean, especially when it's convenient for us, we are definitely serving the Lord. When it's not convenient for us, well, I mean, it could get a little bit dicey. Oh, and by the way, when people are watching us, oh my goodness, you come over to my home, we're going to be the most Christian home on the planet. I can promise you that. But when you're not there, well, I mean, we might let a few things slide. Oh, and if things are normal for everybody else, like if their families, their kids are playing those kind of video games, even though those video games kind of elicit very self-destructive behaviors, I mean, because it's normal, I guess it's okay that my kids play the same video games. And if you're watching shows on like HBO and Cinemax and Showtime, and even though they're really entertaining, listen, if you're watching shows that have half-naked ladies in it, I guess it's okay that my family watches shows with half-naked ladies in it, right? I mean, it might not honor and serve the God that really lives in this home, but everybody's doing it. So I guess it's normal and therefore okay. But then I'm reminded of what Jesus says, right? He says, I have come to give you life and life to the full. He's not okay with normal at all. Why? Because normal's broken. Normal is everybody's house falls down. Normal is everybody's home breaks apart when that storm shows up. Jesus, I'm not interested in normal. What I'm interested in is in the exceptional. So what I believe is that if the exceptional life that he came to give me brings me peace and hope and security and safety and encouragement and accountability, man, I'm okay with giving up normal to get the exceptional. Now, every one of you that I've talked to about this, you're like, that's me too. Let's go for it. Let's do this thing. But then I've realized this week, there's another question that we're kind of asking, and that is this: how can I be confident, right? How can I be confident that the home I'm building is being built on the solid rock of Jesus Christ? How can I be for sure? And that's a really tough question. I get that. I've asked that too, but here's the cool thing. I was reading my Bible this week in one of the first letters that John wrote, 1 John, and there's a verse in there that I love. It says this: and now, dear children, continue in him so that when he appears, we may be confident. Man, that's a powerful word. And unashamed before him at his coming. Now, I know this passage is talking about when Jesus comes again, right? But I found there's a clue to what faith is in this passage, and that is this. Part of faith is being confident in the presence of Jesus. Take that same thought, right, and apply it to your home. Faith is being confident that Jesus would feel comfortable in my home. Let me say it this way. Would Jesus be at home in your home? Would he be at home in your home? Or if he showed up one day and said, hey, I'm going to kind of hang out with you guys for a while, like, I don't know, forever. Would you be comfortable with him being there if he entered the mainstream flow of your life? Or just say, well, now that Jesus is here, I might have to change some things. I'm going to have to talk to my wife differently. I'm going to have to raise my kids with a little bit more discipline. You know what I'm talking about? I might have to watch different things. My thought process, my attitude, my mentality. If he can see those things, I might have to adjust them a little bit. And so if you could say, you know what? I fully believe Jesus would feel at home in my home. I would say you can be confident that you're building your house on the solid rock of Jesus Christ. If not, we might have some more evaluation to do. But you know what? That's a hard thing for us to do, isn't it? Because it cuts against the current of normal culture. In order to get to that exceptional life where your house is built on the solid rock of Jesus, it is really, really hard. You know how we know this? We said it last week. Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me. That is a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to do. The question is, are we willing to embrace the difficult in order to get the blessing? Are we willing to do this? So I had a couple of challenges for you last week. One of them goes like this. In order to fight for my family, I am willing to open the door to what? I'm going to open the door to accountability, right? Because listen, I just need some people to come alongside me and say, listen, you ought to talk to your wife differently. You ought to be more gracious. You know what I mean? You need some accountability in your life. I'm going to open the door to Christian accountability. Maybe you need some just Christian influence. So you say, I'm going to open the door to a community life group where I can have a set of friends that not only encourage me, but support me and point me to Jesus. That's really what I need. What is it that you need to invite into your home? The other part of that was simply this: to fight for my family, I'm going to close the door to what? I'm going to close the door to those negative influences coming through my TV, through the internet, through video games, whatever it is. I'm going to close that door. I'm going to close the door to pornography because it's destroying the intimacy in my family. And so you're going to open the door to accountability, whether that's in a small group or covenant eyes on your computer, whatever it is. What do you need to close the door to? What do you need to open the door to? Last week was a tough week. But you know why it's so critically important for us to do this? Because so many of us have this mentality, this attitude that says, just kind of go with the flow, right? I mean, we work hard, don't we? And we're at work like 8-9 hours a day, and we just are spent by the time we come home. And so we imagine our home being this place where we get to relax and just kind of settle down. I don't want to fight. But here's what I promise you. Go with the flow are the famous last words of every crashed and burned home. I promise you. Man, you are the leaders of your home. Why are you letting things just kind of go with the flow? Take responsibility. This is your area of authority, even more than what you do at work. So when I meet Jesus, I promise you, I will be held more accountable for what I do in my home than what I do at Brookside Church. I promise you. And if I have a go with the flow attitude at home, even though I'm a pastor, right? My home's going to fall apart. Famous last words of every crashed and burned home. You don't want that. You don't want that. This is true not only for the front door of your home that we talked about last week, it's true for every other room in your home, including the place we're talking about today called the living room. This is a good time. You're going to want to open your Bibles to John chapter 14. This is in the New Testament. It's the fourth book in the New Testament. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. You're going to want to turn to John 14. Look at verse 1 through 6. Let me kind of tell you what's going on while you're turning there. In John chapter 13, Jesus probably has one of the hardest conversations he's ever had with his disciples. And this is when Jesus tells them for the first time, hey, listen, there's going to be a time coming very quickly where I'm not going to be with you anymore. And I'm going to go to a place that you cannot follow me right now. Later on, you'll be able to follow me, but right now, you're not going to be able to follow me. Listen to some of the things he says. He says, where I'm going, you cannot follow, but you will follow later. That's in chapter 13. So by the end of that conversation, here's what you need to understand. The disciples are kind of panicking Because who's Jesus? Jesus is their friend. Jesus is their leader. Jesus is their family. And all of a sudden, they just heard that Jesus is leaving and going away. And I got to tell you, their hearts were super, super troubled. You know why? Because in the same scenario, our hearts get troubled. Because whenever we see one of our family members, right, who we love doing life with, when we see one of our family members separating themselves from the rest of the family, our hearts begin to break. And our spirits are troubled. We have the same feeling that the disciples felt when Jesus said, I'm leaving. But listen to what Jesus says. Jesus will, in chapter 14, verse 1 through 6, he will describe what life is with him one day. I want to show you. This is going to be really cool. He says this, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. And if it were not so, I would have told you. But I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. Guys, this is going to be a great conversation. I'm going to encourage you to keep leaning into this, because when I read this week, it really hit me in my home too. Now, let me say this. Whenever we have read this passage and we envision the day where we're with Jesus again, I think we've kind of butchered this passage in two ways. Number one, this talks about when Jesus comes back, right? As a church, we call this the rapture. And I think we have a pretty poor view of what the rapture is. This is Jesus' second coming, when he takes his church to be with him, when he judges the world. And here's the thing, when we think about this, it kind of freaks us out a little bit. Because we loved his first coming. Maybe here's this precious 8-pound Jesus in the manger, right? And we love, because it's peaceful, it's quiet, it's still. He came to save us from our sin. And we love that, right? But when Jesus comes again, he's not coming as a baby. He's coming as a conquering hero. He's going to judge the world. And I don't know about you, but when I think of Jesus showing up, it makes me a little bit nervous. Because what if I forget to confess the sin I committed last night? It makes me a little bit nervous. I mean, it's almost like we're playing this cosmic game of spiritual hide and seek with Jesus. And as long as he's in heaven, we can kind of hide from him a little bit and do what we want to. But as soon as we hear Jesus say, ready or not, here I come, we're like, oh no. We better fix our life pretty quick, because he's going to be mad when he finds. I've seen billboards and stuff say this, when Jesus comes back, what will he catch you doing? I'm like, really? Is that the best image of Jesus coming back? And so it scares us, doesn't it? In fact, I found something online I think describes our picture of this. Jesus is watching you right next to the adult video store. That's a scary thought, isn't it? My goodness. Now, I did have an idea that one day I thought about playing a prank on you, that when you come into church on a Sunday morning, I just do this on the side of the sidewalk. Just listen, you're like, oh no. The rapture happened and I was left behind. That is no good. But here's the thing. We often get this image of Jesus coming back and we develop a fear of him. He's just going to come and judge us. And so now we just have to hide from him. I don't think that's in any way what Jesus is talking about, but I think there's another inappropriate image of us being with Jesus again. And that is what the other part of the passage says. Put John 14 back up again. He says this. I know, wait, not that one. One more. There we go. In my Father's house are many rooms, and if it were not so, I would have told you so. In your King James Version, if you read that, it says this, in my Father's home are many mansions, and I go there to give you one. And listen, if the rapture means that I get to go to heaven and have the best of Beverly Hills homes, sign me up, man, let's go. I'll take a mansion. Here's what else I've heard. Your mansion, the size of it is in direct proportion to your holiness. Like if I have a whole lot of sin in my life, I'll get to heaven, right? But I'm probably going to just live in a shack that's like miles away from the throne of God. But if you're like Billy Graham or Mother Teresa, who's never sinned ever, I mean, you get like this palatial estate with the best views of the throne of God. You've got the heated pool, the 3-car garage. You've got all the nice appliances, the tennis court. I mean, that's you, right? I love what Jim Bergen says about this. He says, help an old lady across the street, upgrade your appliances in heaven. I mean, give $10,000 to your church, get the heated pool in heaven. Go on a mission trip, get the 3rd-car garage. Now, here's the big one. Become a missionary, get the palatial estate next to the throne of God. I mean, this is the mentality that we have, as ridiculous as it is. the better we live here, the more gooder that we are now, right? The better of a spot we'll have in heaven. I think these are two really inappropriate and so inaccurate images of what life with Jesus looks like in his home. What if instead he's just trying to paint a picture of what we love the most about our homes? Because listen, let me ask you, what is it that you love most about your home? I would dare to say it's not the square footage. It's not the accommodations. It's not the features. It's not the functionality. It's not how new it is. I would say to you, the thing you most love about your home is that you get to be with the people you most love. Because if you don't love your family, I don't care how nice your home is, what I keep hearing, you try to get away from your home. And if you love your family, it doesn't matter how much of a shack it is, you can't wait to get back to your home. What if Jesus is saying, I want to build a place that you just want to be a part of? Listen to what he's doing. What if I'm building a place that you can just come home to? Because here's what I know. When your kids grow up, they fly away, they become independent, man, you're proud of them, aren't you? But when they call you up and say, hey, we're coming home this weekend, that's the most exciting news you've heard all week. And you stop everything, man. You clear your schedule and you're like, okay, we're going to fix the house, clean it up, get the room all ready for them. Oh, and we're going to make them their favorite food, right? Why? Because you're so excited that your family is going to be with you again. And by the way, parents, let me encourage you. Your kids right now in high school, they might be so excited to leave, right? To become independent. And that's totally fine. But I promise you, just give it a few months. They're going to call you up and be like, hey, can we come home? Because they will desperately miss the place where they are loved unconditionally. Man, that's the real value of home, isn't it? What if Jesus says, I'm going to go there and prepare a place so you can come home to? So I think when Jesus says this, you know what he's doing? He's getting his Oprah Winfrey on, isn't he? He's like, you get a room, and you get a room, and you get a room. And this is what he wants us to do. So here's the thing. If your image of heaven is just the golden mansions and the streets of gold and all that kind of stuff, this might be what you're really looking forward to, right? I mean, there's the streets of gold. How much is that worth, right? And whatever that castle is, if that's my mansion, I mean, how do you live in spires? I don't know about that. But if that's what it looks like, that's cool. There's the clouds and the stars, and man, that's beautiful. If this is your image of what being with Jesus is like, maybe that's accurate, and that's cool, I guess, but I think you are missing actually the most important, valuable part of what heaven is like. What if this is not at all what Jesus wants us to see heaven as? What if this is what he wants us to see? Can you imagine the day? Oh, you just run into his arms. And you experience maybe for the first time in your life the true freedom from sin. And you realize, see him face to face. This is my Savior. Can you imagine what that day will be like? And I promise you, when you see Jesus and you give him this kind of a hug, you're not going to ask him, show me my mansion. You're not going to say, how much is that street of gold worth? You're not going to wonder, hey, is my street of gold bigger than my neighbor's street of gold? All you're going to do is just be excited that you're with Jesus. I think what Jesus is doing is he is describing for us what life in God's home looks like. Here's what I learned this week. It was a fascinating discovery. In Jesus' day, the kind of homes that people built, it's a little bit different than the kind of homes we built, right? If you wanted to build a home for yourself, the first thing you would do is you would build an outer perimeter wall. It was there for protection, safety, so it was fairly high and thick, right? And then there's usually only one way into that complex. But once that was built, what the father would do is he would build a room that's kind of on the corner of the perimeter house, and that place would called, listen to this, the father's house. That would be what it's called. Now, when that father had a kid, right, that kid would want to get married, and so he can get engaged to a girl, and during their engagement, you know what he would do? He'd go back into that complex, right, and he would take a space next to the father's house, and he would build a home for himself, a room for himself. A few years down the road, he would have a kid too. And that kid would want to get married. And so what he would do is now that he's married and on his own, he'd go back into that same complex, build a room attached to his father's house, attached to his father's house. You know what else you get to do in there? There's a massive courtyard, right? That means you get to socialize and do life with your family. That means there's a big old table somewhere in that complex, protected from the outside world. There you get to enjoy food with your family. When Jesus says, man, I'm going there to prepare a place for you. There's a reason the church is called the bride of Christ. Because this is what husbands would do for their future bride. And when the day comes where we finally step into his home, this is what we get to experience. There's really one foundational thought of God's home that we need to embrace today. It's not the size of our mansion. It's not the square footage. It's not the heated pool. It's not the tennis court, the streets of gold. All that's cool and stuff. We might experience that. But the foundation of heaven, the foundation of God's living room is 3 simple words. I'm with you. That's it. And you see this all over Scripture. Now listen to what 1 Thessalonians says. 1 Thessalonians says this. There it is. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Now listen to what it says. And so we will be with the Lord forever. The last thing that Jesus tells his disciples in Matthew 28, right before he leaves for heaven, he says this, surely I will be with you forever to the very end of the age. What Jesus is most looking forward to when his family shows up is to simply be with him. Now here's the question. How do we take our heavenly reality and bring it into our earthly homes? First of all, you got to ask the question, what's the living room for in your home? This is so you can all kind of be in the same room and just kind of relax, watch ESPN, get on your computers. Here's what I know about my house. If we're not careful, the kids will be watching TV, I'll be on my computer, Heather will be on her phone. And I'll stop and look around and be like, man, we're all in the same room, but man, we are miles apart. We are miles apart. You know what I realized this week? My daughter is 9 years old. I have already lived half of her life in my home. And my goodness, is that time flown by. And right now, listen, my kids are 9, 6, and 4, okay? Right now, in their perspective, I'm pretty awesome, okay? I'm pretty amazed. I'm like their favorite person in the world next to Heather, rightly so. But there's going to be a day, right? You've experienced this too, when I'm not the coolest person in the world. Olivia, if I have anything to do, it's not going to happen, but Olivia's eventually going to start liking boys. And she's going to think, hey, that guy, he's way better than you, Dad. Of course, I know that's not going to be true. But she's going to think it is. And one day, she's going to walk down the aisle with somebody who's going to take my place as the most important male in her life. That's future, right? But right now, I'm pretty awesome. Here's the question. What am I doing to be with Olivia to maximize that time? Because here's what I promise you. When I'm on my deathbed, when I'm about ready to die, I can guarantee you I'm not going to look back and be like, man, I wish I spent more time watching TV. Man, I wish I spent more time on Facebook. I wish I spent more time writing memos and reports. And what I'm going to say is, man, I wish I spent more time with my family. And I think this is something that most of us have a very hard time doing. You know why? Because in our home, we either want to relax and just kind of focus on ourselves, or we get so busy, we just don't have time for family. I mean, listen, there's laundry to do. There's dishes to do. There's homework to do. There's a garage to clean. There's leaves to rake, a yard to mow. My goodness, we can't let those things slide. We'll spend time with our kids tomorrow. Here's the question I'm asking myself. When's the last time I went on a date with my wife? When was the last time I went on a one-on-one outing with each of my kids? Man, it feels like it's been forever. When was the last time I asked my daughter, how's your heart? What are you struggling with? And so what I'm realizing this week is, listen, just as last week, I was giving myself the challenge, take control of the front door. Here's what I'm saying, take control of my living room. And if I see my kids like, hey, we're watching too much, let's just play a game, okay? Or let's just hang out together. And they say something like, Dad, I want to watch my show. You know what a passive, weak father would do? Be like, okay, you do whatever you want to. But as someone who is in charge of my domain, but I'm going to say, I know you want to watch the show, but nope, this is my house. We're going to talk with each other. We're going to play a game together. We're going to go on a walk. We're going to go get ice cream. This has been really hard for me. And so I thought of a few challenges that I think can encourage us. It begins, I think, when I'm reminded of what Moses says in Deuteronomy chapter 6. I'm going to put it on the screen for you. Look what Moses says. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house in the living room. And when you walk by the way, when you walk in the neighborhood, right? And when you lie down, when you're putting your kids to bed, what do you talk about? You shall bind them on your hand and they shall be as a frontlets between your eyes, which means to me this. Do my kids see me reading my Bible? Do they see me living a prayer life? Do they see me praising my wife, lifting her up, encouraging her? Or do they only see us argue? You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. We talked about that last week. So here's what I'm learning. Listen, I got to take control of the living room of my home. And so when I put my kids to bed and they just want me to read like any book, I mean, that's fine. Read them books, right? But when I say, no, tonight we're going to study the Bible. I'm going to read you some stories. And they say, no, I want to read this book. I say, nope, because I want to give you Jesus right now. And this is my home. I get to choose how I am with my family. How I'm with my family. I've got 3 encouragements for you that I know has encouraged me. The first encouragement is there's one word I think, 4 encouragements. There's one word that really describes what we need to embrace. It's something that none of us think we have enough of, but it's something God put in every one of us, and that is leadership. Take leadership of our homes. Men, come on, you are not weak. You're not passive. You're not called to submit to culture. You're not called to submit to your kids. You can love them, right? But this is your home. Take the leadership of your home. I've got a couple other things. Number 1, this one helped me. I will no longer let anyone or anything else control my life and dictate the pace of our life. Listen, if your kids say, I want to be in soccer, basketball, baseball, volleyball, I want to be in the gaming community, whatever it is, you get to choose that. But if it's taken away being with them, you get to decide how much they're a part of. Number 2, I will no longer abdicate control of my house to my kids. That's not their house. They're going to have their own house one day, but this is your house now. Number 3, I will no longer stay busy to avoid family awkwardness. Man, if you need to have a conversation, I know that's awkward sometimes and hard, and sometimes you say, you know what, I'll get to it later. Right now I've got really busy things I got to focus on. Sometimes we keep ourselves busy to avoid difficult conversations. No, time to have those conversations. You know, it's interesting. We're going to probably hit this a little bit more when we talk about the dining room, right? But there's a passage that I came across this week that I think it really spoke to me. Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. Anyone who opens the door to me, I will come in and I will dine with them. And there's that key word again, it's with. So some of you this morning just simply need to open the door to Jesus and say, come on in and start doing life with me. Because if you ever want to get prepared for heaven, start living with Jesus right now. Living with him right now. I want to pray for you guys. And what I want to do is give you guys an opportunity to say, Jesus, give me the encouragement, give me the courage, give me the wisdom to be with my family while I get to be with them. Some of you are older and you're like, man, my kids are already gone. Some of you are single, divorced, whatever it is. Only you in the house. Here's the question. Start with Jesus. If you don't have a family right now to be with, focus on being with Jesus. You say, it's just me and my spouse. The kids are gone and out of the house. That's fine. Make sure that you present to your kids and family what being great grandparents, what marriage looks like 30 years later. There's still opportunity to be with each other.